Hi everyone! Today I'm going to show you how to remove outliers in Python. So let's get started. So first of all, what is an outlier? It is a data point which is significantly far away from other data points. In this video, I'm going to use the interquartile range, aka IQR, to detect outliers. So what we're going to do is to set the lower boundary and the upper boundary, and any data point which lies outside this range will be removed. And I'm going to use the box plot to visualize the data. So I've already launched Python in Jupyter Notebook. For your information, I'm using Python version 3.8 here. So the first thing you want to do is to import packages and modules. We're going to use pandas and matplotlib. You have to install these two packages additionally in order to use them. So after you have done that, you can import pandas and the module pyplot from matplotlib. And next, we're going to load the dataset. For my dataset is a CSV file, so I'm going to use the read CSV function in pandas. And I'm going to name it df_raw, which stands for data frame raw. And now we can take a look at how the dataset looks like using the head function in pandas. We can also check the shape of the data frame using the shape function in pandas. As you can see, I have 822 rows and 3 columns here. We can also get the descriptive statistics using the describe function in pandas. So next we're going to define a function called plot box plot. Basically we want to visualize the data using box plot. And for this function there will be 2 input arguments, namely the data frame and the feature. I'm going to call it df and ft. So next, we can plot the box plot using the box plot function in pandas. And we can specify the column. In this case, the input to the column will be the input feature that we specify. So by default, the box plots in pandas will have some grid, and we don't want to show the grid, so we're going to set the grid to false in PLT. So now we have defined the function, we can call it. So the input data frame will be the df_raw. And let's plot the first feature. So as you can see, for the first feature there are some outliers. Let's see how it looks like for the second feature. As you can see, for the second feature, we also have an outlier. So what we're going to do next is to remove outliers. So to remove the outliers for multiple columns, we're going to use a two-step approach. First, we're going to extract all the outliers for all the columns, and then we're going to use the indexes of those outliers and remove them from the original data frame. So first, we're going to define a function called outliers. For this function, there will be two input arguments, namely the data frame and feature. And then we're going to calculate the first quantile and the third quantile. To do that, we can use the quantile function in pandas. And then we can calculate the interquartile range, the IQR. Okay, so next we can set the lower boundary and the upper boundary. So the equation here is to subtract the first quantile from the 1.5 times IQR. As for the upper boundary, it will be the third quantile plus 1.5 times IQR. And then we're going to create a list, ls, and this is going to store the indexes of the outliers. To extract the indexes, we can use the index function in pandas. And there will be two conditions. The first condition is any value smaller than the lower bound. The second condition is any value larger than the upper bound. So a note here is to use the OR operator here, because if either of the condition returns a true, it means that it is an outlier. And we're going to return this list. So next, we're going to create an empty list to store the output indices from multiple columns. I'm going to call it index list. And we're going to extract the outliers for all the columns. To do that, we need to use a for loop. And we want to save the outputs indexes into the same list. To do that, we're going to use the extend function in Python. Okay, so let's see how the list looks like. So these are the indexes of the outliers. It shows that in this row there is an outlier. So what we're going to do next is to define a function called remove, which returns a cleaned data frame without outliers. There will be two input arguments, namely the data frame and the index list. So a note here is the index list may not be sorted or unique, so we need to do some processing of it. To remove the rows which contain outliers, we're going to use the drop function in pandas. And the input will be the index list. And then we can return the cleaned data frame. Okay? So let's call the function to see if it works. I'm going to save it into a variable called dfCleaned to indicate that there are no outliers. The input will be the df row and the index list. So we can check the shape of the new data frame. So now we have 813 rows, which is less than previously. Yes, the 822 rows. So let's plot the box plot to see if there are still any outliers. So for feature 1, there are no more outliers. And let's see if it's the same for feature 2. Great. So the last step is to save the cleaned dataset into a new CSV file. And we can use the toCSV function in pandas. So this is it. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching and see you next time.